Well, hello there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you are lucky enough to be doing it too. I'm Bushka on Blitz, and I'm doing it with a spring in the step. I'm very, very close to going to New York City, the Big Apple, just a few days away, and I'm looking forward to catching up with a few of the patrons and anyone who's turning up at the event on the 19th of November at the Altman Building in New York. It's going to be a lot of giggle, a lot of fun. There's going to be the Blitz finals at the same time as the Wargaming League finals going on. I think it's $7,000 first prize for the Blitz kids and $10,000 first prize for the Wargaming kids. So that should be fantastic. One other bit of housekeeping before we get on with this review of the lovely Pershing, the Tier 8 American Medium. I'm doing a podcast. If you have any questions to send in, it's going to be a pod that's an AMA or a Q&A. Snake's going to ask the questions. He's put up an email address, askbushka@gmail.com. So if you want to know what colour undies I wear, how many chin-ups I do every morning when I wake up and go for my 10-kilometre run, send them to Snake Eyes on askbushka@gmail.com. I won't know the questions before he asks them, so there you go. This is a patron-sponsored post. As always, if you want to sponsor the channel, click away, go for your life. There'll be a link up very soon. The Pershing. You have to use the gun depression on this tank. It's so Tier 8 medium. I mean, there's this huge section of Tier 8 that's just the same tank. Gun depression medium with about 200 alpha. The Indian, the STA-1, the Centurion 1, the Panther 2. They're all gun depression tanks with low alpha. Now, the Pershing has a lower rate of fire than most of these. At 225 alpha, it's the second highest alpha tank in the tier after the T-44. I'm not including premium tanks here. This is just straight up and down, standard stock tech tree tanks. And it does have 10 degrees of gun depression. And despite the gun handling numbers, the gun actually handles really well. It's not as bad as you'd expect. 0.37, I can't remember if they buffed that recently in the last year or so, but there you go. 0.37 dispersion, 2.3 seconds of aid time, and 225 alpha. Where it does fall down is the pen on the armor-piercing rounds is pretty average. 180 millimeters of pen, and that can be very, very frustrating. But you're going to see in nearly all the video work here that I'm constantly on a hill or a slope. And there's a reason for that. Your armor is absolutely rubbish, okay? Even the strongest part of your armor profile, the gun mantlet, is not that tough to pen for a Tier 8 tank. It's 206 millimeters either side of the gun. Around the edges of the mantlet, you'll find that you have 365 millimeters, but in the middle of the mantlet, it's just 206. And either side of the mantlet, where you've got the turret and the hatch and all that, whops down to a very low 114 millimeters. And there's nothing in your tier that won't pen you frontally with AP, regardless of how heavily angled you are. So what you've really got to work on is finding positions like this where you can go hull down. Now, the gun mantlet's good enough to sneak up, but you're going to see here there is a Pershing over there, and we're just going to look at that. That's what his armor profile looks like from 180 millimeters of pen. I mean, that's not a whole lot, but I'm going to use the gun depression. You can see even with 180 millimeters, the spots either side of the gun itself, the mantlet, are very, very close to clear pens, and that's not fun. So don't rely on the turret or the mantlet, but do rely on the gun depression, and you're going to have to be smart about the way you play it. True story, I did a review of this tank, and it was pretty much exactly the same as this, and I did it like 8-9 months ago, and then house cleaned my hard drive because I was running out of space and thought I'd uploaded it and just deleted the review, which was a real punish. So I've had to do this again, and I've had plenty of practice, and as such, I feel like I know the tank inside out. It's not a bad tank. It's like so many of the Tier 8 mediums. It's just a tier chock full of reasonably priced medium tanks that will reasonably do the job, and very, very few of them will excel to the point where they're going to be an overpowered tank at their tier. Below you at Tier 7, and I've said this before, you have an absolute monstrously large amount of damage per minute going on. You have multiple tanks that are in excess of 2200 damage per minute. You have several tanks that are right up there at 2400 damage per minute, even though they're a tier below you. At this tier, the damage is very, very ordinary in terms of damage per minute. And that means you've got to be a peek-a-boom tank. And that's all right, because you've got gun depression and you've got very nice mobility. 48 kilometers an hour, 41 degrees of traverse on your tracks, and 38 in your turret. Now, that's nice, but it's not special. And your DPM numbers are atrocious. 1,770 damage per minute raw, which is just phenomenally rubbish. And I've never understood why Wargaming have made Tier 8 such a pariah in terms of damage for medium tanks. And it's no surprise that it's the tier that gets dominated the most by heavies. And maybe that's a good thing, because, to be honest, if you're going to drive any kind of medium tank at Tier 8, your best bet is driving a T-54 lightweight, because that thing's got all the armor of the mediums at Tier 8 that you could possibly have. It's got more armor than this tank, that's for sure. And it's got the same kind of DPM, but it's got light tank camouflage and light tank mobility. And that makes the Pershing and the STA-1 and the Cent 7 and the Cent 1 and all these tanks and the Indian that are actually quite similar in characteristics a little bit obsolete. But that doesn't mean you can't be successful with it. And while we're here, we may as well talk about it. And look at all these hills that I'm on. Constantly on hills and constantly using a little bit of mobility to bamboozle big bad tanks like the Borsig, the Boomsig, as my good mate Met, the Welshman, calls it. Sorry about belting you in the rugby the other day, Met. My bad, mate, and I'll tell the Wallabies to go easy next time. Thank God the All Blacks got belted by the Irish. How do you like them ones, shaky? Sorry, I need to shut up. The Wallabies got smashed by the All Blacks all season, so it's nice to see them get a bit of a comeuppance. And you're going to see the mobility that I'm talking about here. That Tiger's got me on toast, but I'm moving around. The gun depression lets me get shots off. I can still stay away from that Tiger. Get looks in here. I'm leveraging off my good mate. I think it's Ouija or Swiss is in the IS-3 Defender. And I'm leveraging off that big monster tank to get shots on the Dracula. Stay out of the way of the Tiger to a large degree. Getting the odd bounce. I mean, it's enough of a turret that you'll get the odd bounce. It's much better than the Dracula there. And then we get the job done. And that's the kind of tank. Again, I'm always using hills or being on a hill or coming off a hill. It's very rarely like a Russian tank where you're on a flat surface and working from there. And if you are, you better be using cover, because as you can see here, you are very, very easily penned. Even that T-43 can go straight through the front of your tank with standard AP rounds. That has no problems whatsoever. And you've got to be very careful about the way you do things and make sure that you're not exposing yourself at all. And there you go, the Type 59 moving on down. We just heard his track. And he'll put one straight through the front of my tank if he wants. Yep. But we get there. I enjoy driving this. I enjoy driving it a lot. And one of the reasons I enjoy driving it is, even though it's not what you would call an overpowered tank, it is an American medium that has gun depression. And the American line, for all that it can be decried at Tier 7, like I think the T-20 is a terrible tank, it has that solid ethos right throughout. Gun depression, average gun handling, fairly good mobility, and fairly solid at firing on the move. The M46 pattern is glorious like that, in fact, even though it's got very pants armor. They've improved the gun handling a little bit, and it's always been pretty good at on-the-move shooting. We're going to have a look at a game here on the Mirage map, and you're going to see I'm being quite cautious with it. One of the things that will not pay at this tier, especially with so many IS-3 Defenders and IS-6s and IS-3s and Lurvers and tanks with heavy armor profiles, is pushing and YOLOing, because your standard armor is crap and their standard armor is good, and your standard rounds are crap. Look, that's an STA-1. That's another gun depression, 225 damage tank. I mean, it's got much better DPM than you, but again, it's the same kind of tank. And there's a Dracula, and we should all bow our heads for a minute's silence, because this Dracula driver has obviously lost his way. He has not YOLO'd through the red spawn now, and the map is at least 2 minutes old, and that's a phenomenal effort on his part. That's here we go though. Yeah, no, sorted that out real quick. They're fantastic track drivers. They don't know the way to go backwards. They're just one way and one way only at the enemy, trying to jerk a shot, but not doing very well there. And I mean, you can see this is the problem with pushing in this tank. is when you get someone that just wants to hit point trade, it doesn't matter how solid you play, whether you keep turning, you keep angling your armor, doing all the right things, they'll still pen you. And that can cost you. And that you can see there, I lost a third of my hit points dealing with that Drac, despite the fact that he wasn't playing particularly well. He just YOLO'd and pushed. And you're not in an IS-3 defender. You're not in a heavy tank. And heaven forbid that one of those kind of guys push on you, because their armor profile is such that your 180mm of pen won't cut it at all, and you've got to use a lot of APCR. So we're pushing up now through the middle of the cap. We're tanked down. And again, I'm going to try and use these dunes just to get a little bit of a shot here without getting hit. We're going to go around to the side so that if he comes through the cap and starts pushing down towards the base or pushing across, we can then get shots in his date. And lo and behold, that's exactly what's happened. And again, I speak to you with regard to the armor, the penetration values. I've switched up to APCR there, even for a back shot, because if I hit the spaced armor of that IS-3 and end up like bouncing, things will go very, very poorly indeed. And there's the Tiger 2 over there. We've switched back to AP. We're going to get a shot across on him. And there is someone camping the top. No surprises there. The medium tank on the enemy team is camperizing the top. The IS-3 is doing a good job holding over there. I'm taking shots, but I've got to try and put damage in that Tiger 2 while it's available. That AT7 is giving it to me. And they've got great DPM. Despite the fact that I don't like many of the British TDs for their tier, the DPM on them can never be ignored. If you sit there in front of an AT7 or an AT8 or any of those kind of tanks, you will cop it, and in no uncertain terms. And that Type 62 gets the job done. And we take one straight through the gun mantlet with heat. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You've got 206mm of pen on your of armor on the gun mantlet, and that Type 62 has just gone straight through it with heat. The toughest part of your armor profile cannot be relied upon at all. And we get a bounce there. You can see that shell go ricocheting up in the air. And I'm not too worried about the AT7 because I know I've got the mobility to isolate him against that rock at any point in time. The IS-3 is apologizing. I don't know why, because he did a great job. Hi JL, well done amigo. I'm just waiting there. The STA1 is going to do it wrong very, very soon. You'll see, keeps popping out and we get that shot. Now we've just got to go around the AT7 and we get the winner chicken dinner. And that's how you really need to play this tank. You have to be a little bit aggressive and you have to look for your spots, but you don't want to expose the tank too much. It's a fun tank to drive. It's solid as a rock. It won't make you much money. You're going to have to fire Pramo. I probably fired too much there, but we're at a point where... Oh, that's one other thing. It fires APCR. And heat now seems to work in accordance with the laws of physics, where it does not go through spaced armor. And APCR is, in my opinion now, the premium ammo of choice. I much prefer it to heat, and I think it's a big plus to have APCR on your side. So there you go, boys and girls. That's the Pershing. I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed driving it, which I didn't think I would, but you get in the right mindset with these kind of tanks, these gun depression, tier 8 meds with low alpha guns, and you'll do all right. They certainly lend themselves to my playstyle. I love the Cent 7 and 1. I love the FV 4202. I love guns that are accurate and good gun depression, but if I can't get that, I'll take a mobile tank with gun depression every day of the week. I really enjoy them. As always, look after yourselves. I'm off to New York soon. Remember, if you've got any questions that you want Snake to read out in the podcast, ask bushka@gmail.com. Snake will check that out and ask me the tough questions. He won't shirk the load. If you would consider sponsoring the channel, that would be lovely. The more sponsors we have, the more likely it is that we can keep this thing going for a lot longer. Just click on the link there at the end of the video to go to the Patreon website and help support Bushka on Blitz. I'm your mate, loving tanks, loving life, living large. Look after your families, look after yourselves, and stay safe on the battlefield.